force. Let's explore what we could put this down to now. I'm joined via Skype by former Statistician General of South Africa, Mr. Livelihoods, and Xolelwa Kashekatia from the Mapungubwe Institute of Strategic Reflection. A very good afternoon to both of you, and thank you very much for joining us. Morena Livelihoods, let me perhaps start with you. I mean, if you're the numbers person, by no stretch of the imagination am I a numbers person, but when you look at what the numbers have been telling us globally and the rapid rise that we're seeing, are we reporting on this purely as a numbers thing, or should we be giving a little bit more context to it just to enforce the urgency of this, especially when we see the deaths that we have seen in Italy and the United States?
Yes, indeed. I think we need to put context to it. While they are reporting on numbers and very small numbers, for instance, one death in South Africa is a small number, but a significant number in terms of the speed which it can get transmitted and more deaths can occur. So we need to give context to this, in that in South Africa, 5 million people stay in shacks, and that's a very serious problem because the hygiene conditions, the lockup conditions, and all those can be very, very challenging. While that is the case, there is also no water and other things that can make the challenges insurmountable. But a lockdown is still a better option than a no lockdown. What needs to be done, I think, is how we distribute food and medicines and all those to those kinds of environments. South Africa has had 1,280 with one death. The numbers look somewhat better than other numbers, but that gives us just cold comfort.
Just to underscore what Mdate Livelihoods is talking about, Sis Xolelwa, before we come to you, if we could play this bite, please, just to take a look, listen at what this gentleman had to say, speaking to my colleague Masego Ratlaga last week.
First of all, now you're born class examine, first of all, Imalena is only 6 rand, 8 rand, Malin 9, so Tengandoni up, Kalimal. Up of the Abandon on the parties, engine and nannings. How about you come and I reduce Lendoleko, yes, like I mean, this is from what else sing about to first of all. I actually said Lendoleko 21 days, nobody about 10 days, 5 days. I understand the London. Never want to balance certain Baba Pemi in Yaup. Go for Kalone Conor, first of all, and Tinas Baza Band by Conor, first of all. Because even a police, Nakuta Agbamba,
These are just some of the sentiments that ring highly in most societies when you speak to people. I think when you took out that 6 rand or 8 rand to show that this is all I have, so if I don't work, what happens? Spolela, when you hear such sentiments on the ground from everyday South Africans, what do you make of that?
Good afternoon, Judy, and thanks for having me. It is actually not surprising for me that we would hear such sentiments, because as much as the state is trying its best to flatten the curve through a national shutdown, however, we need to understand that the inequality and poverty in South Africa is so endemic that for the majority of South Africans, you would find that people are actually more frightened of hunger than the actual virus. I mean, as you heard from the gentleman who spoke, they're saying, well, for him, it's about making a living, it's about eating, it's about that meal for the day. But also what actually conflates this or makes it even worse is that there's still the persistent apartheid special planning, wherein it's difficult for those in the township to actually comply when it comes to the lockdown rules. People are living in back rooms, they live in informal settlements. It is a bit challenging, and at times it seems like the regulations that were adopted as if we are a first world nation. So we need to be very mindful of the deep-seated inequalities that we have as a country.
Mdate Livelihoods, these inequalities will eventually, even though we're saying that with the coronavirus, that everybody now becomes equal, maybe to underscore that is that if our healthcare system does get burdened, right, where we have more people who are staying in hospitals, those who do have all those who don't have, we're still going to be in the same situation where you can't get medical treatment because the system is overburdened. So to underscore just how important that we're all the same here, so how do we even begin, to come right?
Well, I think we have these historical inequalities and disparities, which the NHI was attempting to address. I suspect that many will understand what the wisdom of the NHI is. But we are now in a crisis and we don't have an NHI. We are still thinking about how we implement it and how we organize for funding it. I think it is a very important point to understand that inequalities are not things that are sustainable, because when disease strikes, such as coronavirus, all of us will suffer. There is a new dispensation that the world has to engage post-coronavirus, which has just shown to us how unsustainable all our technologies, all our developments, unless we focus on the human condition. As I said, 5 million South Africans, probably now 6 million, are in these shack settlements where there's no water, there's no electricity in adequate amounts, there's no playing space for children. When we ask for self-quarantine and self-isolation, it becomes very, very difficult. Having said that, I still say a lockdown under coronavirus circumstances is a better option than not having none. What we need to do is to speed up the distribution, delivery of things and so on. One of the key infrastructure for us to succeed in circumstances such as this one, which we ignored over a number of years, is having people to have physical addresses, which Justice Mogoeng implored South African government to implement, because we cannot have citizens voting without being on the voters' roll with an address. That was ignored. 4 years later, we are in this crisis. If we had that infrastructure, it would ease our pain. Lessons have to be learned and have to be carried forward.
So, in closing up perhaps the conversation, how much has corruption really cost the continent? And with this virus just highlighting it, how much do you think corruption has really cost us, and what can we do to turn the curve there?
When it comes to corruption, I think what it did was to erode trust in the state or institutions, state institutions in particular. However, you find that there's actually hope when you look at the latest trust barometers as released by the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation. There seems to be a lot of trust in media and some of the, especially the local media outlets, listed as being trusted. And also there seems to be trust in the new president. And I think that is demonstrated by the pledges that were made by the 3 rich families. And for me, or for us in particular, in our work, we find that to be a form of social compacting, where we see parts of society coming together. However, when it comes to state and state institutions, there's still a lot of distrust, and you can see that, how people are finding it difficult to abide by the rules. And also, I suppose it's informed by the knowledge that there is a correlation between that corruption and also the vulnerable positions that people are finding themselves in.
Thank you very much to both my guests, Padi Luhohla, the former Statistician General, and Kolelwa Kashe Katia from the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection.